Welcome to Incredible Idaho. I'm Wayne Walker. Tonight we'll take you to the panhandle of our state to explore the wonder of the Big Lake Country. It's an area that harbors some of the more unusual and rare creatures of our state, such as the endangered woodland caribou. And it's also home to one of the few remaining populations of grizzly bears in the continental United States. River! Chris Bechtold of the United States Fish and Wildlife Service shouts a warning. He's about to enter an area where he and his fellow biologist Tom Redaunt have laid the cable snares and smelly bait that constitute a grizzly bear trap. All clear. Today the trap lies untouched, but yesterday it was a different story.
We had the snare anchored to this tree right here. That's empty. And caught about a 250-pound female. She wrapped herself around this tree with one turn and luckily took out her aggression on this tree instead of one she was anchored to.
That female was the 35th bear to be captured and radio collared by biologists since this study began in 1985. 10 years earlier, the grizzly bear had been listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act, mandating the development of a plan for conservation and recovery of the species. The idea behind this effort is to electronically monitor the grizzlies in order to gather some baseline information on habitat use and reproduction, and, most importantly, to discover why grizzly bears are not thriving in the Selkirks. Historically, grizzly bears were found across the West, from Alaska to Mexico, but the range drastically receded as a result of habitat destruction and conflicts with man. Today, grizzlies exist in 5 isolated ecosystems in the continental United States. Reintroduction of the bear into a 6th, the Selway Bitterroot region, is presently being explored by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service in cooperation with local citizens and environmental groups. The last known grizzly in that area was killed in 1956. The Selkirk ecosystem, which has always had a resident population of grizzly bears, reaches from Idaho's panhandle into Washington and stretches north into British Columbia, following the jagged peaks of the Selkirk mountain range. This summer's trapping operation is being conducted on the Canadian side of the line, about 15 miles north of the Idaho border.
There's a grizzly track right there.
It appears an adult bear has passed this way since last night's rain showers, leaving its distinctive tracks and a pile of scat in the road. The biologists check for a radio signal to determine whether it may be a bear they've already captured and collared.
It's 11. That's that
0011?
Yeah.
That's that first female.
Yeah, which was just over the ridge here the other day.
10 years of research has yielded some critical information about the Selkirk grizzly bear population. The good news is that the bears are reproducing. The average litter size is 2.2 cubs, so twins are common and triplets not unusual. This is a good rate for a grizzly bear population.
Unfortunately, we found out that on the survival side of the equation, that doesn't look nearly as good. So far, since we started the project, we've trapped 36 different grizzly bears. Of those bears, we know of 13 deaths associated with those bears. Out of the 13 mortalities, we can only account for natural causes on 3 of them. So that leaves 10 deaths of grizzly bears that we know or think are caused by man. And that certainly seems to be the limiting factor to grizzly bear recovery in the Selkirks. Man-caused mortality.
The reasons vary from mistaken identity, a black bear hunter mistakenly shooting a grizzly, to intentional poaching and malicious killing. The answers lie in educating the public on how to distinguish a black bear from a grizzly and in closing a small portion of back roads to motorized vehicles.
Road closures are a way to try to maintain the ecosystem in such a state that grizzly bears can still exist. Road closures only restrict vehicular access, motorized access. People are still more than welcome to hike, to ride their horse, to ride their mountain bike and back a gates.
The last stop of the day proves to be the most exciting.
Oh yeah, we've got one caught. It's just, Tom's going in to see how well it's caught and what it is. get a size.
The size of the bear determines the amount of drug necessary to sedate it.
What do we got?
230-pound male black bear.
The biologists set to work, measuring drugs and gathering equipment. It's not unusual for a black bear to be found in a grizzly trap. Their habitats overlap, and both species are drawn to the bait, an easy meal of roadkill deer. The biologists enter the trap site armed with a syringe mounted on a jab stick and a precautionary shotgun. The bear has taken refuge up a tree, climbing as far as the snare allows. Chris quickly injects the drug, aiming for the muscle mass at the bear's shoulder, and then backs off to wait. Eventually, the bear slides down the tree, and the biologists get their first clear look at him. He appears to be a healthy adult animal with a rich black coat. He's anchored to the tree by the snare and closed around his left front paw.
I'm going to give him a little bit more because he should have been down at least 5 minutes ago, probably more than that. And he's showing the effects of getting about half the drug.
Once again, Chris jabs the bear. It's late in the season, early autumn, and the bears have layered on fat in anticipation of winter hibernation. This fat layer can slow the progress of the drug, and although the black bear doesn't have the massive claws of a grizzly, he's a dangerous animal when cornered, and the biologists treat him with respect.
That bear weighed 230 pounds. I don't weigh 230 pounds, and that guy's got big claws, and they could do a lot of damage even when they're tranquilized.
Foot, 6 3/4. Claw, 3/4.
Standard measurements are taken to add to the data profile on black bears in the Selkirks, and then the biologists prepare to weigh them.
Let me read the scale.
220, 230.
If this had been a grizzly capture, the bear would be fitted with a radio collar. But instead, the black bear is placed in the shade and made comfortable, the blindfold replaced with large leaves. It's clear that capturing and radio collaring grizzly bears and processing the black bears that wander into their traps requires a big effort. Inevitably, that raises questions about the concept of trying to preserve this wild, secretive, and mysterious creature.
Grizzly bears have always been in the Selkirks. They're a historic part of the landscape. They're a native animal. All the bears we have in the Selkirks now are resident animals. They haven't been transplanted at all. So I guess you get into a value judgment on should we manage the land to the point where we can let native animals like grizzly bears exist? Or if the grizzly bear just happens to get in our way, do we just say that's too bad and do what we want to do regardless of whether it means the bear can continue to survive or not?